Hello, and welcome to a workshop on developing proposals for the Undergraduate Research Stimulus Program. I'm Harriet Lindsay. I'm an associate professor in the chemistry department. Also, for the past year or so, I've been serving as a faculty associate in the Office of Research Development. My primary objective at ORD is to increase research and creative activity collaborations between undergraduates and faculty here on campus. So before we talk about the stimulus program, for students and faculty who have not worked on these kinds of collaborations before, you may be wondering why you should make this extra investment of time and effort. Well, I can tell you firsthand that these experiences are incredibly rewarding. For faculty, scheduling regular interactions with your student collaborator means scheduling more time for your scholarship. You may find that you're actually able to accomplish more by incorporating these activities into your weekly schedule. Also, depending on the project, you may find that these interactions with your students stretch your intellectual limits or introduce you to new lines of inquiry or creative activity. Finally, and most importantly, engaging in an intellectual collaboration with a student will build a memorable, long-lasting relationship. So for you students, when you collaborate with a faculty mentor, you'll be challenged to think much more independently than you typically are in your courses. You'll explore your discipline in much more detail and hopefully become even more interested in it. On the practical side of things, working on a research project may give you the opportunity to present your project at a conference or even publish a paper. So these kinds of things will help you tremendously when you apply to graduate or professional schools. And finally, you too will build lifelong relationships with your faculty mentor. Now that I've convinced you that you want to participate in these kinds of activities, let's think about how collaborative scholarship with undergraduates is defined. So the Council on Undergraduate Research is a fantastic resource for mentors. Their website is cur.org, very easy to remember. EMU is an institutional member, so all faculty here have full access to all the resources on the website. CUR actually defines undergraduate research and creative activity as any activity that advances knowledge in a particular discipline. And so they go even farther so as to define 4 criteria for undergraduate research. First, that it should contain a mentorship component. It should be an original project, so it makes a brand new contribution to a discipline. It has acceptability, which means that it uses sort of the methods and the accepted practices of a particular discipline to accomplish the project end. And finally, it should be disseminated, so either at a conference or in a juried exhibition, etc. There are a couple of different models for faculty-student collaboration. And so the first that I want to sort of have you think about is the apprenticeship model. So in this case, the student's project is related to all or part of a faculty mentor's ongoing scholarship. This is most common in the natural and social sciences. So there are a couple of advantages of this. Students benefit directly from the faculty's expertise. They receive usually one-on-one training in the field from the faculty expert. And so the student-faculty work is also complementary, and as I said earlier, this can increase the productivity on a project, and it has the faculty and the student working often side by side. One challenge with this is that the faculty mentor must be very careful so as to design a project that's beneficial for the student, so that the student can make an intellectual contribution to the project. Another model is one in which the student comes to a faculty mentor with a project that he or she has come up with, has designed. And so one advantage of this is that the student makes an immediate intellectual contribution because it is, after all, their project. Also, a student is able to work more independently almost immediately, which can be very appealing to some students. One sort of issue that faculty have to face here is that a student may come to you who's chosen a project that's really not well matched with your expertise. So you may have to spend extra time getting up to speed with regard to sort of what's required to carry out the project. Also, it may be a challenge that the student works more independently because some students may prefer to work more closely with a faculty mentor or may require more one-on-one interaction. So now that I've convinced you that you should work on a project and I've given you a couple of models for these kinds of projects, let's talk about how you can get funding on campus to engage in these kinds of collaborations. And so the Undergraduate Research Stimulus Program came into being a couple of years ago, and the idea is it's intended to facilitate these research and creative activity partnerships between EMU undergraduate students and faculty mentors. And so I've given here the internal research website that has much more information on this particular award. So every year we have 2 calls for proposals. The first is October 31st, so this is the first deadline. That's when the applications for winter fellowships will be due. We'll have about 8 awarded then. And then February 15th is the deadline for spring-summer fellowships, when we award about 16 fellowships for spring and summer. So the majority of the awards are given for spring and summer work. The amount is $2,500. $2,000 goes to the student to work on a project, and then $500 is given to the faculty mentor in the form of money deposited into an indirect cost account in the faculty mentor's home department. This can be used for supplies for the project, for travel for the faculty mentor or the student, really any kind of reasonable expense that is related to the project. And so now what I want to do in the next few minutes is go over the components of the proposal in some detail and show you how those are evaluated in the proposal rubric by the Undergraduate Research Advisory Committee, the committee that evaluates these proposals twice a year. There are really 6 main components: proposed research, expectations, learning outcome, project timeline, budget, and then the faculty mentor's CV. And so I'm not really going to say much about the CV. Mainly the reason why we ask for that is we want to see that the faculty mentor is an expert in the proposed area. So there's a good pairing of a student with a faculty mentor. So first, let's talk about the proposed research. So this part is written by the student in collaboration with the faculty mentor. And so the student initiates the writing, but the amount of editing can vary depending on how much is needed and how much the faculty mentor wants to put into it. Some faculty mentors choose to do a great amount of editing and really allow this to be a learning experience for the student as they come to know more and more about the project. So any amount of editing you want to do is just fine. One thing to keep in mind is that the people who review these proposals are not specialists in your field. So minimizing the use of jargon is really key to helping us understand what you're proposing. Really what you want to lay out in this section is you want to describe the project goals. You want to establish the originality of the project, so let us know that it's making a new contribution in your particular discipline. And then you want to describe very generally the methods that you're going to use for the project. And this gets back to this idea of acceptability. Let us know that first the project is feasible here, you and your student have the expertise to carry it out, and that you're using sort of the accepted practices in your discipline to accomplish your goal. For those of you that have human subject issues, definitely just let us know what you're going to be doing to take care of those IRB considerations, and I've listed here the website for you, so you can go there and check out what you need to do. And so really what this section is designed to show is that the student understands the project and in general has an idea of what tasks are going to need to be accomplished to see it to completion. So in the rubric, we really have about 5 places where this is measured, and so the rubric is scored for each criteria. So we look at clarity of goals, originality of goals, appropriateness of methods, as I said before. There's a box for CV, and really we just again look to see if your area is at least closely related to that proposed in the project. And finally, so the evidence that the student understands the project. And this is something that you as faculty can take care of in the editing process, is to double check that the student sort of understands the relevant literature and understands really what the project's contribution is to that relevant literature. The second section is the expectations for the student and the faculty mentor. This is written by the faculty mentor, but the student should read and agree with it. So the student needs to know what he or she is getting into. We expect there to be some sort of indication of what's going to be expected of the student per week. You may want to put down a suggested number of hours to work a week. We suggest 20 hours per week if the student is going to be working in spring or summer, 10 hours per week if they're working spring and summer. Same deal during the winter. We expect about 10 hours per week, but you can just list accomplishments that the student should be at this place, at the end of each week. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an hour per week kind of thing, although that tends to be easiest to measure. This section should also include dissemination plans, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. And so you'll want to lay out what the student's role is in these plans. That is, the student will prepare certain pieces for an exhibit. A student will assist in writing a paper. A student will prepare a poster for a presentation. Likewise, you need to lay out as a faculty mentor what your role will be in preparing these products for dissemination. And so also there needs to be a section on exactly what you as a faculty mentor will do. Will you do training? Will you do weekly meetings? Will you review work? What are you going to do in terms of assisting and preparing these products for dissemination? Some people have weekly lab meetings, people that have in the sciences typically do. And so what will be your role in preparing the student to do that? Also, if you are a faculty mentor who is supervising a student-initiated project and you really find that you have to get up to speed in this area that's going to stretch you a little bit intellectually, here's where you can address that. As a faculty mentor, you're going to do this literature research in order to make you to put you in a better position to be a good mentor for that particular student. Here's a look at the rubric so you can see how those things will be measured. So we have the clarity of the faculty mentorship role, how well you lay out what you're going to be doing, the appropriateness of the expectations for the students. So are you going to measure how many hours they work per week, or are you going to look at accomplishments every week? And then how are you and your student going to disseminate this work? So the next section that the faculty mentor needs to write, again with the student's agreement, is the learning outcomes section. So here the faculty mentor should be listing outcomes, so really learning outcomes here. So it may be a set of skills that the student has to acquire before he or she can really get into the project. So this is sort of different than the project outcomes. This is really what you anticipate the student learning. For someone in the sciences, it may be a student needs to become proficient in maintaining a laboratory notebook, for example. And this can extend to the creation of the product, but feel free to include, again, more rudimentary skills that are going to be milestones en route to completing the project. Here, dissemination can also be an outcome, although it's not necessary really to explain dissemination plans twice. So if you included that in the previous section, it's not necessary to go over that again. And so here are the corresponding rubric line items. So again, we were looking for clarity and appropriateness. And by appropriateness, we just mean, is it reasonable to accomplish these kinds of learning outcomes during the award period? And then how are you going to monitor that these outcomes have in fact been accomplished? And finally, again, there's the articulation of dissemination plans. If you covered this in the previous section, fine, good enough. So the last couple of items that are going to go in the proposal are the timeline and the budget. So you need to include a brief timeline. These can be bullet points. You can literally put a line to save space. But this should be here with the key outcomes and milestones indicated over the award period. A budget is very important if you want your $500. So for folks who don't include a budget for the $500 will not be awarded. So if you don't want it, just don't include a budget, and no problem there. But remember, this can be used for any expense related to the project: supplies, publication costs, copying, whatever. And then it could also be used for travel. Just a plug for the National Conference on Undergraduate Research. If you're in a discipline that doesn't particularly like for undergraduates to present at your discipline-specific conference, the National Conference on Undergraduate Research is a great alternative. And so there's a website for there to allow your student to get a presentation under his or her belt as an undergraduate. And so finally, there are line items here. And just to remind you, the budget is not part of the total score. You don't lose any points if you don't include it. You just don't get the $500 if you get the award. So finally, I want to make you aware of the proposal guidelines. You want to be very careful to obey the page limits, the font size, and the margin restrictions. So we have a 3-page limit. This, of course, excludes references, faculty CV, and the budget. So all that can be in excess of the 3 pages. We do require 12-point font and 1-inch margins. And so you'll notice there is a line item on the rubric where we will deduct points for minor deviations to this, but you'll also notice the bolded point in the upper right-hand box. So it may be that if you don't adhere to the guidelines, your proposal could be returned without review. So definitely pay attention to these limits and guidelines. One other thing, or a few other things that I want to make you aware of: we only allow 1 proposal per student or per faculty member. Students must not graduate, must not finish their undergraduate career before the end of the award period, so they still need to be undergraduates completely through the award period. Collaborative projects are possible, so there can be interdisciplinary, interdepartmental projects submitted. In the guidelines, there's a paragraph that specifically addresses how these proposals are submitted. So if you have such an idea, I encourage you to look at that. And then finally, I'll remind you of the internal research website that has the complete guidelines and the rubric, so you can have that in front of you as you prepare your proposal. And finally, I just want to put my contact information there, and Wynn Martin in the Provost's office is also the point person there for any kinds of questions, procedural or otherwise, that you may have regarding these proposals. Best of luck to everyone as they prepare their proposals. Thanks for attending.